Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 9, Episode 22 of our weekly Q&A videos. So you have something, actually.
Well, I just wanted to follow up. I don't do this very often, but because we do these videos on the fly a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I come up with ideas as it occurs to me. There's sometimes I have other things that I sort of ruminate a little bit after we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that when we talked a bit about that research on autism.
Yeah, and we're going to keep this
empathy.
brisk.
Yeah. Well, my problem is really, besides nitpicking any specific thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's that the overall approach, that overarching idea of how they're approaching it was that it was the opposite of science. 'Cause to me, science is you have a hypothesis, you test it, you come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And it means that fundamentally it's falsifiable. So
Which means you can prove it wrong.
It's always possible whether you actually do it or not. So you can always conceive of a situation where you can be proven wrong.
And that's the distinction between science and metaphysics. Metaphysics is something that you can never prove wrong. So, for example, ghosts, right?
Right.
If you believe in ghosts, and I'm not going to weigh in and say that, you're right or wrong or make any sort of value judgment, whatever your beliefs are.
Right.
But if you believe in ghosts, it is likely that there's not one test that you can run where a specific result will say, well, definitely ghosts don't exist now.
Right.
And so that's what makes something a metaphysical proposition, which is the proposition is that ghosts exist. And anything that's scientific always has to have one test that you can do, where if a certain result happens, then it's wrong.
Right. So it's the conceptualization. It's the potential. So so when you do a study, you test it, and if you come up with a bunch of different results in your study, you talk about whether they're good or bad results. Actually, you talk about why it's meaningful, where it could have gone wrong, why these results may not. Anyways, so the study you were describing to me, they spent a bunch of time making up reasons why the results were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it has to be balanced against, well, if you were expecting these results and you set up this test to study it, you really need to point out not just why the results are wrong, but what did you do wrong to get to the wrong results, instead of
or what it means even if the results aren't wrong, because a lot of the times you're uncertain. So when you do a test and you get a result, you go, this isn't what we were expecting, and maybe what we were expecting is true, and if that's the case, then XYZ reasons might be it. It might be the people that we studied. It might be, we did a test, and we didn't realize that, it was right before lunch, so everybody was hungry, and maybe that would mess something up, or whatever. Something. You have a reason, you go, so maybe this is why. But also, maybe the results are the other way. And what if those are what if what we got is actually right, and it's just weird, and it's something different?
Right.
Yeah.
So, you get your results, you have your discussion, and that should be the impetus to move on to the next study, the next level of it, whether it's in a different direction or further sort of delineating what your understanding of whatever thing you're studying is. It shouldn't be just to throw things out and say, oh, well, I guess, this what we studied was no good. Anyways, that was what bugged me the most.
Yeah, so there we go.
I want to point out with the the gameplay, if we're doing it right, we're going to have both Blackest Night Superman and footage of Apocalypse Darkseid. And I just want to point out that traditionally I've commented that the best team has to have Blackest Night Flash true, needs to have Blackest Night, because he's the most powerful, I think, Blackest Night team member. Needs to have Blackest Night Hawkgirl, because you're basically doubling Flash. You have a second Flash because of her.
Yeah.
And the third one is, I used to think it had to be Blackest Night Batman because he had the good passive of unblockable attacks. And I thought, well, Superman's not so great. So the fact that Superman can block unblockables, but more importantly, until I played him a bunch this last week, I didn't realize how good he was, because unlike a lot of other characters where you can't do a bunch of special 2 damage past the person that's in front of you. And I don't know if it's not possible, or just for practical reasons it doesn't happen with Blackest Night Batman, because his special 2 is all back-end loaded. I think I'm really surprised. As long as Superman Blackest Night Superman is doing enough damage, he could potentially even knock out 3 characters. He doesn't do enough damage usually, but I'm reevaluating how good I think he is, and I think he's right up there, maybe even a little bit better than Blackest Night Batman on a Blackest Night team. Of course, again, Flash, Hawkgirl, they're non-negotiable. Flash is really the best, and having a second Flash is even better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there we go. And I think maybe before we do the first question, one last piece of housekeeping, which is we sometimes talk about stuff that we're watching or reading or playing that we like.
Yeah.
And so we've started watching season 3 of The Boys. Oh. We're not even a whole episode in yet. Obviously, we can't comment on the entire season and the quality of it, but we've talked about The Boys a couple times before and how much we've liked it. And so far, season 3 is looking like it's not slowing down at all. It looks like it's pretty full steam ahead, and we need to see the shape of everything. I think part of, episodic media, especially when it's in seasons like this, is that you kind of need to get to the end of the season to know if stuff comes together. Right. And that's not to say you can't know if something's good or bad. But you can enjoy the process.
Sure, but that's relatively new. I mean, the way you're talking about it, that's your expectation. That's relatively new. There used to be lots of shows where there was no overarching plot development. It was really, each episode was basically formulaic.
Well, now that was the medium, right? I think that matters a lot, whether and how people are consuming it and how much access people have to it. But The Boys is very story-based.
Oh, for sure.
So, obviously, if the season was a drag all throughout and it was unenjoyable to watch and I wanted to stop, right? I could judge something as bad, right? But I think sometimes with these story things where they culminate, right? It's hard to say exactly how good something is until you know what the payoff is at the end of the season.
Right.
Yeah. But we're enjoying it a lot so far. And I don't know if I've just spent enough time away from it or if they've amped it up a little bit, but it's just a little bit grosser than I remember it being. It's a little bit more extreme than I remember it being. And it's a lot, but we're having a good time with it. It's pretty compelling. And it's it's a hard thing to recommend because our channel tends to be pretty PG. At worst, right? And this is absolutely like mature.
It's rolling in its maturity.
It's not.
It is a wash in maturity.
Delicate sensibilities,
right?
And that's not a dig. There are people who just might not be comfortable with gore or who might not be comfortable with certain, inappropriate themes. And there's a lot of themes in this that if there's a theme that offends you a little bit or that you have a hard time stomaching or consuming for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
There's a not insignificant chance that this is going to touch on at least that for at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not like to be edgy, right? They do a lot of I think they handle things relatively
It doesn't feel
well.
Gratuitous.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it is
a
or
little
not.
gratuitous.
Well, yeah, I guess yes and no, but it's more just like, to me, gratuitous would be if you focused on it, when you do it in slow motion, when you really sort of make it pretty and elegant or whatever.
Yeah.
I think this, to me, a lot of it is plot driven, character driven. And it happens.
It doesn't feel throwaway. It doesn't feel like they're dismissing things when they happen.
Right.
It feels like they're giving stuff its gravity. Because I think the way that, like, when you deal with sensitive topics really poorly, the most obvious way that happens to me, and I'm sure I'm not being comprehensive here, but it's when you have a sensitive topic and then it's a joke or you use it as a really sort of cheap plot point, where it's, it's like the thing where you... like bury your lesbians. I forget what the trope is called. Where a lot of times they'll, if there's like a lesbian couple in media, a lot of times they die as a way of forwarding the plot, and it's like a really sort of recurrent trope. Where when you have queer people, they're sort of tools for other people reaching their self-actualization in some way, or fuel for somebody else's story, right? And so I think some of the ways that you can end up being insensitive to those things is by dismissing them or making them unimportant, and having them there to sort of shock you and then having it be nothing. And I don't think they do a lot of that here. I mean, there's enough stuff happening that there are shocking things that get dropped pretty quick.
Right.
But in my own limited experience and my own sort of personal positionality on these topics, I feel like they're not being really sort of dismissive or crass about stuff. Anyways, good. We're liking it a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think a big part of it is, too, when you're dealing with any kind of media, if it's being imported or ported, I guess, from a different medium, that there's a better chance to me, in my mind, that it's going to be really good, if only because they selected out from all the other potential source materials. Tweaking may or may not be a good thing, because sometimes people feel like they need to make a change just to put their stamp on it. But I think there's a real good potential, because clearly somebody saw something in this out of all the other things they could have picked. They picked this one thing. Yeah. And so I think, because it's based on a comic book.
It's true. Yeah. I think it gives you a good starting point, but I think sometimes you also run into the fact that it can be kind of crummy, because the original thing is already out there and exists, and you just know that the original thing is good. And then they go, oh, well, we can do something with it. And sometimes you make something that's really, really cool and that can stand on its own, and that's awesome. Yeah. But then sometimes you make something that ends up being kind of like a pale imitation of the thing that you're stealing from.
See, I think that happens way more if you're moving within the same medium. Okay. So let's say you take a show from the UK, and then you do a North American version of it. Like Ghosts. Then you really need to you need to separate yourself. Otherwise, it really is a pale imitation, and often is. Like those remakes, very rarely do I think, oh, this remake is as good or even better. But when you pull it from comic books, and you do something to make it more cinematic, you make it more visceral. I think the impact of some of the violence in Boys is probably bigger because it's live action
than just like a lavishly drawn frame.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's I think very fair. Speaking of, I think we might have recommended it already, but Ghosts, if you haven't watched it, the British version of Ghosts is very good.
Yeah. I love seeing all the people that we know from Taskmaster in British shows. It's hilarious.
Yeah, we've shouted out Taskmaster.
Have we? Taskmaster is brilliant.
Taskmaster is one of the best shows, period. Yeah. It's really awesome. We love it very dearly. If you're at all interested in sort of challenge shows or game shows, if you like comedians
or
sort
humor, if you just like laughing, oh my gosh,
it's great. Okay. Yeah, but anyways, that's our recommendations. The Boys, Taskmaster, Ghosts. Taskmaster, I think, is pretty
broad appeal,
and there's a censored version, so that can be pretty family friendly. I think as far as stuff goes,
that's actually pretty.
There's a bleeped cool one, and then Ghost is also very family friendly, I believe, and then The Boys is very not.
Right.
Yeah. So our first question of the week comes from Rebel for Ebel. And this is a comment, not a question, but we just wanted to talk about it. And they say, even when you're not both there in a video, I mentally insert the mhms where appropriate. And then Corin Com says, this is so true. It's like you can just hear the other's commentary. Now, I think that's very entertaining, because normally the person who's absent is me. There's been, I think, a small handful of videos that I've done without you on the channel. Right. But in general, I think my schedule is a lot more in flux.
True. That's a good way of putting it.
Just in our lives. I mean, it's no secret that I've been in school, and you don't have as much of the equivalent of an exam season. Not to say that you're not more or less busy sometimes.
Right.
But
my exam season is reviewing exams for my professional college.
Yeah. So not to say that you don't have stuff, and not to say that you don't work extra days sometimes here and there.
Right.
But I tend to have less flexible deadlines and more time crunch when I have something that I need to do. But so I think that's funny that we're enough of a package deal, and that people have sort of learned enough about the way that we talk and interact that they can hear the meek one.
They expect it, right? There's a rhythm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the one thing I do want to point out about this, though, is that, the weekly recaps lend themselves more to one person. Not because there's not a contribution to be made, but because you can sort of get through the main thrust of it, and it's still the stuff that people want.
We very rarely have a sort of aside in the weekly recaps, because it's supposed to be the same content. We have content that we need to get through, and there is some talking about like the characters and who's good and whatnot, but it's primarily informational, whereas this is primarily conversational.
So there's no way I could do this without you.
Yeah, because you get maybe some information from us, but we're not a primary source, so hopefully you're getting very little information from us. Hopefully this is primarily entertainment, and maybe you get put on there's a lead to a piece of information that you check with somebody else first before you go ahead and assume it's true.
Although we're usually pretty good.
Listen, I always like to think I am, but I make no promises. I'm just talking, you're just talking. And we're not doing research for these. We don't have a script in front of us, we're not doing research, we're just sort of chatting. Sometimes we have some notes about what we want to say.
Right. But just remember, because what used to bug me before was, as I was thinking ahead to the video, I think, I have these good ideas. Film the video, and I'd forget all of them, they go out of my head, and then 10 minutes later after we uploaded, I think, what happened to those good ideas that I had?
Yeah. That's a good way of organizing it. But yeah, so, anyways, I find that really entertaining, and I appreciate that we've got people who can...
who can do the work for us and put us in there when we're not.
Yeah, who can edit me in their heads. It's very good. Okay. So our next question comes from Mom's Spaghetti, and this is from a little while ago when we were talking about a comment related to a team and a gear setup and how to play them.
So that was, I think it was Static with Rebirth Raven and who was the last one? Maybe Hawkgirl. It might have been Hawkgirl, just to speed everything up. I can't remember now off the top of my head. Anyways.
And so they say, I think my comment ended up being slightly confused there, so the way I'll generally gear him is Lexcorp helmet and chestplate, and the reason I like that so much is because it gives you the reduced damage while blocking and the ability to heal upon using special too. Both of these address the issue that he's taking a ton of damage by repeatedly blocking. He gets power so quickly without really any consequential damage taken, which lets me just spam special 2 frequently, and therefore heal from whatever minor damage he took. The only issue I run into is that he's extremely fragile if he gets caught in a juggle with a crit augment basic damage dealer such as Flashpoint Batman. Basically, Static is preferably the only person I'll have tagged in during a match. It sounds like you thought I was saying he isn't my main damage dealer. I just have him geared in a weird way, but my emphasis is dealing damage with the special 2. I only tag Static out if I'm against someone with annoying block breaks like Ares, AO Deathstroke, Red Sun Batman, etc. A team I generally will use is Static with Lexcorp helmet, chest, and discs, paired with Arkham Knight with damage gear, then focus on heavy combo attacks against a stunned opponent, and then any character with high damage, and I equip them with Cloak of Destiny to take advantage of a stunned opponent, strictly in the case of Survivor, if Static Special 2 is disabled. I hope it doesn't come across like I'm being argumentative here. I just think there's a misunderstanding for how I use Static. I'd appreciate it if you guys give my Static a shot on either multiplayer or Survivor sometimes, but if you either miss this comment or don't feel like doing it, I understand as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things to unpack here. Yeah, I appreciate the comment first. Appreciate the thought that was put into it. And I think we have to acknowledge at least there's an inherent, not necessarily power imbalance, but maybe just a conversational imbalance where we have the platform.
Oh, we get to talk as much as we want.
Right. So it actually, I feel like I want to apologize if I gave Mom Spaghetti the impression of misrepresenting what they were saying.
And also, I think, what I want to point out here, which is great, is that tone indicator, right? Like, I hope it doesn't come across like I'm being argumentative here. Because, first off, I think we try to assume the best out of people when they're not coming in and saying, hey, you suck, I hate you.
We've had those.
But in general, when somebody comments, I am not super inclined to go, that person's just being a dick.
Hey, PG, man.
but also, it's really easy to not assume that when somebody goes, hey, I'm not starting a fight or anything. Not picking up. I'm not starting drama. And so that's always helpful.
And then actually not starting drama. Yeah. Like the problems with that sometimes, not in this case, but sometimes when people say that kind of stuff, it really is sort of an introduction to actually do that kind of stuff. So, I don't want to be racist here. Then somebody's going to say something
no
racist.
Offense, but I hate you and I think your videos all suck.
So, when you say no offense, they're gearing themselves up to say something offensive. Yeah. When they say, not to be sexist, that means they're going to say something sexist. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like an introduction for it. But this was totally
this was cool. Great. No issues there. No worries.
So the interesting thing when you talk about team setups is there's some inherent assumptions I think people make at the beginning, and I'm guilty of this all the time, about what makes a good team. And to me, unless you specifically argue otherwise, I think the good team starts with the assumption starting assumption is that they can mow through another team quick. And if that unspoken assumption is there, my issue is then this static team, the reason why I was assuming static wouldn't be the main damage dealer was because if you gear him without Tantu Totem and without Master's Death card, and you're going to rely on 2 pieces of Lexcorp gear to generate power, you're going to be waiting a while to generate the power because you get it from doing attacks, which those gears won't help you with, or by blocking specials, which that gear will help you with. Mm-hmm. And if you're having to wait to block specials from the other team, you're going to have some quick fights if, say, Arkham Origins Batman is in the front slot. You're going to have some really long fights if you're waiting for... You're going to let them whack you around to build power and then hit you with a special.
Yeah.
And hope to block all of it.
So yeah, I think the interesting thing here is that we don't know, right? We obviously, or at least I haven't. Have you played with this gear setup or this strategy specifically?
I have not. Oh, you know what? I can't say I have not. I have tried variations of this, but it was a while ago where I would make him more tanky in order to survive being able to use his passive to take more power.
Yeah.
But I found that strategy just would take too long because of exactly those reasons. Because waiting for them to hit me with specials was not fun.
So the information I'd love to have here, because when you're talking about it, right, I don't have the specific sort of experience, right? And I don't have the numbers in front of me. Because you're saying that he gets power so quickly without really any consequential damage taken, and that you get to spam your special too frequently, right? And so what I'd want to know is how long are your fights? Because that's the part that I don't have, right? We have this sort of the theory where we've thought about it.
Yeah.
But that's another one of the things that we talk about a lot, is that the best way to learn is by playing and seeing how it feels.
Like Blackest Night Superman.
Yeah.
He's gone way up in my estimation just because I made myself play with him over this last week. And again, I'm hoping that's what the footage is when we post this video.
So I would love to hear back from Mom Spaghetti and to hear how long like your average fight is, how long like an ultimate ladder like takes you. And if it's really quick, you know, that is maybe a compelling, if we've in our heads, if our mental model is misrepresenting how long these fights are taking, and we're actually wrong, because we're making a bit of an assumption here, and it's an educated one, right? We have some experience, but you're the only person with direct experience, and the words that we're using of like this would be too slow or too fast, right? But don't really give me a number. I don't have a way of visualizing. I get the sense that it's slower than I'd want it to be, but I have no actual clue. So I'd love to hear how long the fights are taking and get some of that information. If you want to shoot that our way, I think that would be really cool to take a look at.
In my mind, for a team to be good, an ultimate ladder should take 10 minutes or less. And to be great, I think, is the flashpoint.
That should be a good grinding team.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you take more time than that, then you're going to run into... you're going to get burnt out playing as much as we do.
Although, you know, as we've always talked about, the other criteria is just them being really fun to play with.
Sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. If it keeps you more engaged, if there's certain things that you do that make it... Like, I was surprised at how much fun the Elseworld 2 Flash team, or not Elseworld Flash, sorry, Earth 2. I want to say E, I got to mix up with the Earth 2 Flash team was because instead of gearing him to do more damage, I geared him to just do more stun and do more stun damage.
Yeah.
Wow. That was fun.
Yeah. That
was pretty neat. And yeah, anyways, so it's worth it. Like even the static team, I think our static team with Rebirth Raven maybe not have been that fast, but it was pretty fun knocking out the Metal Shazam, the New 52 Shazam, because I like bypassing his passive to not to have him come back invulnerable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for sure, Mom Spaghetti, please get back to us. We want to maybe get an idea. You know, it'd be cool if you actually uploaded some of it, and we'd be happy to link it if you had, put it on your channel.
Yeah, obviously that's a little bit harder for you to do, so that's a higher... We're not forcing you to do any of that work for us, but we'd be interested in seeing it if you got it. Yeah. So there we go. We've got some fun stuff here. So IJR6 says, God, I remember watching you guys years and years ago, and have recently returned to consistently playing Injustice Gods Among Us. I've been watching most, if not all, of your recent videos, and got a huge rush of nostalgia when you were talking about the commenter who may or may not have watched you some years ago. And then we had another one from Chillin' here, and they said, I saw this on my recommendation, and seeing you guys playing this mobile game reminded me of the days when I watched all of your videos back in 2014 to 2017. I'm glad you guys are going strong, and keep it up. I think it's very funny because this is one of those things that's like, it's like when you see somebody that you haven't seen for a while, and they're like a different height, or they're like, you know, their hair is a different style and color, and they're like wearing glasses now, or they weren't before, or whatever. Where they've underwent a transformation, and your distance from them has allowed you to be like, oh wow, that's weird. But for us, we've just been here the whole time, so it's funny that people can feel nostalgia at our present, you know, moment and looking back at us, because, you know, I think we do enough navel gazing anyways, where you go, oh, you know, remember when you did this, remember when you did that. Yeah. But I think it's always funny where people are like, wow, I'm back a couple of years later, and it's like, God, have we been doing it that long?
Yeah. Well, along those lines, and I'm not gonna be doxing myself here because it's all private groups, but I've joined some groups on Facebook involving reading, and books. And it's that kind of, it just hit me the same way very recently, thinking about the kind of books that I read and what got me into reading. And I did a whole like appreciation of Ursula Le Guin. And I just realized that what's funny is that, you know, The Wizard of Earthsea?
Yeah.
The Earthsea, it used to be the trilogy, then it's like 6 books now.
Yeah.
But I found the first book a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I was maybe 10 at the recommendation of my student teacher, younger sister.
Okay.
Who was supervising us on a trip anyways.
Yeah.
So I found it. I didn't like the cover of the book.
Yeah.
And I took it out from the library, but I never got around to reading it before returning it. And it wasn't until a few years later when I saw The Tombs of Atuan, which had this really gorgeous Yvonne Gilbert cover.
Yeah.
That I finally got into it. I thought, oh my God. And then I devoured, like I
so went through everything. You literally judged a book by its cover.
I literally judged a book by its cover.
And it burned you.
And it did. But I had a chance to make up for it years later. Yeah. And I was feeling like that was the remembrance. Like there was, you know, it ended on a different thing because at one point I actually got to meet Ursula Le Guin. All of it was kind of neat. And it was that kind of thing where, because I'm thinking back on it, there's actually a narrative that you can, I don't know if you want to say create, but that you could sort of flesh out. Like you can sort of scrape away. You know, like it's when sculptures take wood and they carve it down and they pull something out of it that's there. Yeah. But so to me, there's like a real story there. I didn't realize it until I was looking back on it and think, oh wow, now I've got some distance.
That's cool.
That was, yeah.
That's fun. That is a fun story. Yeah. It's, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, that's the moral of that story. I think we came up with that.
Yeah. It was, what was neat was that it was, again, that moment of self-aware reflection, I even said that in the middle of it, because I said, hey, so not only is this an appreciation, but yes, it is also a lesson against judging a book by its cover. Because if I had really and hadn't come back to it, I would. But you know what was cool? Tombs of Atuan had an amazing cover. Yeah. It was the paperback version that Bantam put out, and it was so much better to me than the previous cover. Like it was just so evocative. There's something about Yvonne Gilbert's art that's really interesting. I mean, she's doing some much kinkier and weirder kind of stuff now, but back then, her book covers, there was a real distinctive style to it, and it made me want to read the book. And again, the cover can only do so much, but the book was great. Yeah. Highly recommended.
So now, whenever you say don't judge a book by its cover, I expect you to attribute it to BDCKR. It's like in The Office, where they're like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and then it's attributed to Wayne Gretzky, and then that whole chunk is attributed to Michael Scott. Right. Yeah. So that's a fun story. I wonder, do we have enough time for it?
I think we got one question really quickly. Yeah.
So Corin Calm says, do you have any advice for beating Battle 56? I beat the first 2 boxes on that page, but I got stuck after that. Like, what would you say are the minimum stats needed for getting through it? None of my guys really have synergy together, but I do have decent gears. Also, is Arkham Origins Deathstroke that good? For one, are his passive stats hidden or shown on his card? And if you have cards like Arkham Harley and Arkham Knight Batgirl, or even one of them, is it a good idea to try to open celebration packs for him? Because I like all the Arkham cards, but I noticed that Arkham Origins Batman stats are rather low compared to some newer cards, but still wanted to use an Arkham team.
Let me answer the quick part first, and then we can ramble a bit and sort of cut it off when we need to. So yes, Arkham Origins Deathstroke is that good. Yes, his stats are hidden. Arkham Knight Harley Quinn is a great entry hazard. And if you gear her right, then she can build up a bunch of power when she tags in not on her turn.
Yeah.
And Arkham Knight Batgirl, to save the team, absolutely excellent. She's almost as important on an Arkham team as Blackest Night Hawkgirl is on a Blackest Night team. Because it increases the usefulness of any good character, which is what your Deathstroke is.
Yeah.
So in terms of the stats being hidden, it means that it doesn't show on the card, but it shows in the effect how much damage she'll do and how much damage she'll take. So advice for beating battles 56. So offline play is completely different from multiplayer. The key difference maker is that getting hit generates more power than hitting.
Yeah, it's what's called a negative feedback loop.
Right.
So a positive feedback loop is when success steamrolls into more success. If you think about like a kill streak in a Call of Duty game where you get 5 kills without dying and you get something out of it, that makes it easier for you to get more kills and win even more. And then a negative feedback loop is like how it works in offline, where the better you're doing, which is saying hitting somebody without getting hit, the more power they're generating relative to you. So if you hit them with more basic attacks, they're going to hit you with more specials. Right. And if you're getting hit with more basic attacks, you are going to have the opportunity to do more specials.
Right.
And so what that means practically is that no matter what you do, your stats matter a lot more in offline play than they do in online and other fight settings where the energy, the power generation works like that.
Right. So I think it means that if your team can't do enough damage, the bottom line, kind of too long didn't read version is, if your team doesn't do enough damage, you're going to have a hard time winning. I don't know that there's... Well, I was going to say there's no specific advice, but that's sort of a lie. It's been a long time since we played it. But in cases in general where you're overmatched a bit, I think focusing on damage over time, whether it's gears or specials on the particular character, that's going to be your equalizer.
Yeah, ones that deal percentages of their max HP.
Right.
Specials tend to deal a percentage of your own special damage, I think, in most cases.
Yeah.
So that's not as helpful, but especially gears like the Ibistick, where it deals a percentage of their max HP, those are the ones that really matter.
And then you use a strategy to lean into that. So, for example, Master's Death card and second tag in, Enchantress gear, both of those give you an opportunity to have multiple damage over time effects. So not only do they bleed a lot, they bleed a lot faster.
Yeah.
And characters with multi-hit combo enders also give you multiple damage over time effects, like, I think, just in general, who am I talking? What I'm thinking about? What do I want to say? Raven. You know what? Because I got caught up in another idea I was thinking of, is that you can still the best example of leveraging what you've got and leaning into damage over time. Bronze Catwoman and Bronze Nightwing. We've got videos of both of them soloing Boss Arkham Origins Batman back in the day when his fight had all passives disabled.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's what we got time for this week.
So there we go. Yeah. So that's the stuff right there. To finish up, we have some folks we'd like to give shout-outs to. So I'd like to give a shout-out to Eliza Trypophobia Caton. She got holes in her body like a cheese. And this shout-out was brought to you by a meme from Tumblr that was screenshotted and then posted on Instagram that I then sent to her on Facebook. That made her laugh out loud on public transit. The text of the meme, just so that nobody feels left out, was, "If you have trypophobia, stay inside tonight, because me and my girls are hitting the streets and we got holes in our bodies like a cheese."
Oh, is that what trypophobia is?
It's the little holes. Like, if you Google, like, a lotus pod, like, the little bumps is when it, grosses you out, like, creeps you out.
Oh, I think I've seen versions of that where they added artificial holes to somebody, or they did something where it's a person with
like unnatural looking. It's uncomfortable. It's like a honeycomb like structure makes you like look, and
but it's not the structure so much as it's the body integrity. Like, what it feels like to me, those pictures are like a person's physical being has been compromised in an unnatural way.
Yeah, but so there's different layers, right? So when I see like a photoshopped version where they've added artificial holes to a person, that can gross me out a little bit. But some people are naturally just grossed out by that pattern existing anywhere.
Right.
So if they literally just saw a lotus pod, they'd be grossed out by it.
I gotcha.
So there's different levels. So I think I think it's just human for certain images like that to make you a little bit squeamish.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten used to them. Right? You haven't been exposed to them enough that they've sort of lost that effect. Right. But there are some people who experience that to, I think, a much more extreme degree.
Right.
But anyways, that was the joke. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the lovely folks who support us on Patreon.
That would be Bombo Ben, Consul Peasant, and Edwoon at the top tier last word. Sinemac and Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, Eddydoo, and Hoshi 127, who support us on the credited level. And Chris Wolf, Scarlet Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isra E at the gratitude level.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.